It's time for home studio Q&A, a very special, it's a holiday miracle. It's a very special episode of home studio Q&A here today because I'd like to welcome back someone that we have had on the channel a couple of times before, but it's been way too long between virtual drinks, and that is the one, the only, from home, no he's not, from Recording Studio Rockstars, Mr. Lij Shaw. Look at that festive
Ooh,
look.
glad to be here, dude. Good to see you. Hey, man, nice shirt.
I, this is the OG. I'm rocking the. I think
Yeah.
I'm the first one to ever buy the purple, and I think it's still a bit faded because it's had a lot of wearing over time, but still looking good. How are you doing, my friend? Having a good year and the end of the year
Yeah, I'm
here?
doing good. I guess last time I saw you was first day of spring for Down Under
Yes, that's right.
a
Now we're
little
heading
while ago.
into.
What was this, September 1st or something like that, I think.
It was, yeah. And we'll talk about that because you just released your single, which has been a massive success story. So congratulations on that first up because
Thank
that is
you. Thank you.
amazing stuff to see. Do you reckon if there's anyone here that doesn't know Lij Shaw and Recording Studio Rockstars, what are we up to? Episode 379, is it right, on the podcast,
Boy,
Recording Studio
it's
Rockstars?
something like that now. Yeah, I think it is.
Crazy.
And of course I do my interviews. I've done even more than that. So I've already done over 400 interviews
Oh,
now,
wow.
and those will be coming out in the beginning of the year too. But yeah, my podcast is Recording Studio Rockstars, and it's interviews with producers and engineers and studio people, musicians, basically bringing listeners into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that they can make their, hold on, so that they can make their best record ever and be a rock star of the studio themselves. So.
See, I probably could have said that better than you because that's at the start of all your podcasts, and you probably just have a recording that you just hit and just loop in at the start of all your
No, I
editing.
already
So
said it once today. Once I do it once, my brain's like, great, nap time.
done. Don't have to do. Yeah, we're chatting in the pre-show about the joys of aging and trying to do what we do with our aging brains, and it's always
Yeah.
a challenge, but it's good stuff. What we're doing here today for hello to the folks who are here live. If you're watching on the replay, we also love you a whole lot, so you can leave your comments down in the description. But if you're here live and you do have a question, all you need to do is just put a big Q in front of your question, and that will just highlight it, and we'll be able to flag that. But I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to ask Lij anyway, so we've
I've
got a
seen a
heap
bunch of great
of
folks
questions.
here. Shout out to Chaz, Jade, Thomas, Mark.
Let's throw them all up there. Hello,
Holy
Mark.
Ghost.
G'day, Jade Star. Yes, Mr. Thomas Christ, our wonderful moderator. Who Jade Star actually just interviewed Bill Gould from Faith No More, the bass player. So she just did an amazing interview today,
Wow.
which was super cool. Yeah, she's getting. I know. I thought I was impressed getting Mr. Lij Shaw on the show, and then Jade just had to go one better and say, "Oh, I got Bill Gould."
Right on. Right on.
Yeah, Electric Owl Works, as you said before. Hated Neither, Holy Ghost. Yeah, a lot of cool folks here. And if you do have questions, then go ahead and throw them here. Hello, many vibes as well. So yeah, we're talking about. I was actually listening to one of your podcasts just before the show, and yeah, it's amazing like how many different cool people there are, and how many people that you've interviewed in all the time doing the podcasts. And I thought I wanted to ask this right up front because nearly 400 podcasts. Are there memorable moments? I didn't want to ask your favorite guest or, the most
Yeah.
challenging guest, but what were the memorable ones when you look back on that and you go, oh man, this person or that person, they just really blew me away with their interview on the podcast?
Well, definitely I've had, different blown away moments. Sometimes it's hard with so many interviews to remember what lesson was learned where, but different people bring different kind of aha moments to me, I've mentioned this one before, but like, having long ago, having Andrew Sheps on, and he talked about mixing in headphones and then realizing, wow, you can really like get some stuff done in headphones on a laptop. Having so many guests on now that are mixing in the computer that people talk about the expression in the box sort of fading away, like that used to mean something. Now it's like everybody mixes that way. So
Yeah.
it's almost irrelevant. It's almost redundant to say it. Hold on, I want to scoot my camera up just a little bit for you. There you go. Got to get the top of the hat.
Oh, there
And
you go.
then,
Beautiful.
one of the very memorable moments for me was going to Memphis, and I actually did a road trip and did a few interviews there, and talked to Matt Rossbang over at Sam Phillips recording studio.
Yeah.
And that was just really cool. So I want to do more stuff like that too, The doing the past few years, most of the interviews have been, well, all of them really had been on Skype and Zoom. And so now that things are sort of like, everybody's back in studios together, I've
Yeah.
started to do a few more in-person interviews. So I'm enjoying doing some more of that stuff and,
Yeah.
all of it.
Oh, that
But
is
yeah, I
cool.
don't know if as I think of something that just blew my mind, I'll bring it up.
Well, I thought, yeah, exactly. That's why I thought I'd throw it at the start because I know that, yeah, you'll probably reference a bunch of the people you've spoken to, and I
Yeah.
must admit, I do love I love the recorded podcast and like you say, the stuff over Skype and Zoom. But yeah, when you what some of my highlights were you and Joe Gilder like hanging out
Oh,
together,
yeah,
and the
Joe.
Warren Hewitt when you went and had a look around and poke around his studio. So there's some
Yeah.
great stuff over on, and if you're not familiar with what we're talking about here, it is of course the Recording Studio Rockstars YouTube channel. Just crossed the 10,000 subscribers recently, Lij, which is super
Yep.
cool. I
Yeah,
know that.
so we are on. I started as an audio podcast that also publishes on YouTube. So
Mm,
the nice thing I love about YouTube is it makes it really easy for anybody, any of you, to just drop a comment in, and we can have a dialogue. And over on the podcast app, we crossed like 2.2 million downloads so far for the show, which is
yeah, that's just
which has been
phenomenal.
that
And that's the
feels
thing.
good.
If you're looking at Lij and you're going, oh, 10,000 subscribers, that's good, Lij. But, I thought, no, the podcast, the audio versions, like, so because we're all audio folks, a lot of folks listen on Apple Podcasts or I listen on a podcasting app. So, yeah, there's definitely ways. But I must admit, I do like the YouTube because, like you say, even if it's audio only, you get that interaction. Like, we've got it here
Yeah.
with the folks live. We've got the comment section afterwards. So I know people are going to be, oh, man, I didn't know Lij was going to be on the show. I missed it. Here, I had a question. And people can interact down there, which is really, really cool. And yeah, there's where you can go, by the way, youtube.com/, at Recording Studio Rockstars, because YouTube have gone the handle route now. So you can go to
Oh, that's
people, you
right.
can
Yeah.
tag people with their handles. I must say, I absolutely, you've lifted your thumbnail game to a new level. I love these new
Oh, you
thumbnails that
like the
you've
new
got on
ones?
there.
Thank you. Gosh,
Yeah,
that's great to hear. And then there's I was having fun with the headphone one. I finally started. So
love it.
if I do the video myself, then you have the option to, quote, make a thumbnail where you can do like the silly face and make it look
Yep.
right. But when I do an interview, people just send me their photo and we're still like trying to, you know, get that crossover. But that's a whole big part of it is, making it look clickable.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, man, these are the most clickable. I was doing my due diligence because I do keep up with the podcast, but I was maybe 5 or 6 episodes behind, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen into this one with Sarah Carter, and I was like, wow, that's the most clickable thumbnail I've seen in a long time because it just looked so vibrant. And I think it's the thing. A lot of us sort of have been through this, and it's relevant for even if you're making your own music videos and you're trying to get folks to click on those.
Yeah.
Is that less is more? And I think so many of us want to cram everything in. Like I know your old format was, Recording Studio Rockstars episode this person, the topic of it. Whereas now, like you compare that to what you've got now, where it's like mixing tips with Sarah Carter, and it's like I know exactly what I'm going to get there. And this one here, ribbon mics and espresso. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I like coffee. I like cool microphones that I can't afford. I'm going to watch that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Mark's awesome. And yeah, it's tricky because if you do a 2-hour interview, I mean, it's hard to sum it up in, 1 or 2 words, and you don't know what you're going to talk about until after it's over. So,
exactly. Well, yeah,
but
exactly right.
you mentioned the music thing. I mean, it does beg the question in music when we're releasing music and stuff like that. How and when do we get the chance to, make things clickable? It's like,
Mm.
the image that goes with your record or your image as an artist in Spotify. Um, the things that you share on social media, if you make a music video, there's a perfect chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got plenty of time. We got a nice relaxed show here today with Lee. Last time we rushed through and we had about 10 questions we didn't even get to. So I can see the questions starting to come in. So we will jump over to those in a moment. But I thought while we're talking about the podcast, I'll just ask you, or podcast. I know every time I say podcast, people are like, oh, it's a bit proper. We'll go listen to a podcast, are we, Pete? But the podcast, you started this a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
What tips would you have for some? Because I know a lot of people. Podcasting is huge. It's blown up. It's massive now. You're OG. You've been doing it since way before the before times. Do you have any like immediate advice if someone came to you today and said, "Lij, you're 400 podcasts in the can now. What do I need to do to get started doing my own podcast?"
I definitely have advice. I think there's two things I would say about starting a podcast. One is think about what your idea is and what you want to do. Um, think about who it is that you're going to be speaking to. So that's really important. You have to be very, very clear to yourself on who your audience is. Mine is, pro and home studio owners. And it's like I said in the intro, it's like, learning from professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. So that speaks to those of us who care about that. If somebody doesn't care
Yeah.
about that, they're not going to like the show, and that's fine. They're not in the audience. So I think for anybody who wants to start a show is be really clear on who it is that you're talking to. Be
Mm,
really clear on how it is that you want to be able to help them. And then, there's this expression of niche down and then niche down more and then niche down some more. So get really specific. Um, Mine is only as specific as pro and home studio owners, but
mm,
that's still somewhat specific. We're not going to do a bunch of shows that are about live music. We're not going to do a bunch of shows that are about
mm.
um, being in a famous rock band so much. That can come in there, but it has to be about the studio.
Yeah.
And even like stuff that's recorded on a stage somewhere and then mixed in the homes back in the studio, that's sort of
Yeah.
like pushing the boundaries. So that kind of thing. Then the other thing is to remember that like whatever idea you got, there's probably somebody else out there with a similar idea, and there's probably a show like that. But don't be discouraged. The more people that
Yeah.
are out there doing the thing that you want to do, the more that signifies a healthy interest for that topic. And the
Yep.
thing that will make your show stand out is you. It's just you, the
Mm.
individual. Maybe you wear a Christmas hat around Christmas time, and that's what makes you different from everybody else.
Oh, it's so true, and I think that's one thing that I really like about the podcast and the discipline that you've had over time. Because there would have been temptations where you're going, hey, maybe I could grow more if I just encapsulated the live audience, or if I started talking to people in bands, or if I started talking to more famous, popular artists instead of focusing on the recording side. And
Yeah.
I think the risk there is, like you say, you're watering down your potential audience. But and the second point there is gold too, and people have the same worry about their music. I think where they're like, oh man, my music sounds just like this other song. And it's like, guess what? There's 12 notes in the Western scale. Your
Right.
song's going to sound like it's someone else's song. It's just the reality of the situation. So, yeah, that's a killer advice to say that don't, and just do it. And plus, no, there's no better Lij Shaw than Lij Shaw. And I
No
don't think
better
there's
Pete
anyone else.
Johns than Pete Johns right
Well,
there.
very few people like me. And when I got into this, I'm like, oh, there's Patrick at the GarageBand Guide. He already does GarageBand stuff. And I'm like, but he's different to me and he's doing things differently. And that's the thing. You
I
can
think
put
I
your
know
own
that
spin
guy.
on
I
it.
think I remember finding his stuff early on too. But
Yeah.
I will say this. So then the most important thing for podcast, YouTube channel, anything, I'd say even music as a musician or studio as a studio working for other people is consistency.
Yeah.
You gotta let the world know when you're gonna show up, and then you gotta show up.
Absolutely, and that's the key, like a consistency. And I think it was Bobby Osinski. I think I heard talk about that on a webinar really early on. I was just getting into home recording, and I think I asked a question, some sort of question, and he said to me, "Consistency is the key because anyone can have a flash in the pan and get really motivated when they first start something because it's exciting, it's new, and it's sexy, and it's exciting when you get into home recording. It's where are you in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Are you still doing it? Are you still learning and
Yeah.
developing and practicing your craft?" And I've seen far too many people that get really excited and they want to start a YouTube channel and then they do a podcast and they bite off so much, and then 6 months later they don't have the consistency to continue doing it, and it's easy to drop the ball on that stuff. So
Yeah.
there you go, some
Yeah.
killer advice there for podcasting or for life in general. Consistency is the
But
key.
don't be afraid to be inconsistent too. It's okay to
Yes.
make a handful of videos and maybe not keep doing it, but have
Mm.
that experience and then say like, I did that. That was cool. That was fun. I enjoyed it. Don't beat
That
yourself
is,
up, because that really applies to us all as music makers, because it is
yeah,
hard. It's hard to be that music maker that's just constantly
yeah.
perfectly writing, recording, performing, releasing, growing your career, all that stuff.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that's a good, excellent second point to that because experimentation is the key, and working out. Like I often say, it's just as important to work out what doesn't work well for you than what actually does. So
Yeah.
failure. People look at failures as like I'm a failure, and it's like no, you just don't make great R&B tunes because you tried three of them and they were crap. But hey, you're a really great rock producer, so go make some more rock. Or maybe you need to try reggae. Have you tried reggae? Go try some reggae, because why not? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, but behind me there, like every time I walk into the studio, not that one. That's just me big noting myself with my 100,000 subscribers. But that one says that life does not have to be perfect to be wonderful, and that's the sort of thing that I live by every day. It's like we're chasing and striving for perfection, but it doesn't have to be, and plus it doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist apart
Yeah.
from your hat there, which is actually a perfect hat. I love the gold sparkle.
I stole it from that Teletubby right there.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's actually right. Let's
There you
jump in and answer some questions, because we have some jumping in here already. So I've got your Psycho 7, I've got Many Vibes, Neither, and Princess LDG. I'll keep tagging the questions as I ask them to
Yeah, thank you
Lij.
everybody for being here and asking all these great questions.
Absolutely. Mark was first asking brains. You still have those? Yeah. Some days it doesn't feel like it. Some days it feels like you're running on autopilot around here, Mark. I can tell you that. Psycho 7 says, "Hi guys. A question: when recording instruments, how do you recommend getting that bright, vivid sound like the pre-made tracks without overwhelming the rest of the song?" And they have the follow up here of, "My guitar tracks always seem dim." So, Lij, how do you get that brightness in your tracks? What are some tips there?
Well, I'm going to interpret the brightness comment. I'm going to say, so bright can often imply high end, EQ boost, but I'm going to interpret your meaning of bright also just meaning like clear and graphic, and like not sounding murky, not sounding like there's a blanket over it between you and the speakers. So some of the things that will help that out, to begin with, you have to start with the right sound. So you have to actually start with a guitar sound that sounds pretty close to, and if we're starting with electric guitar, for example, that should sound pretty close to the electric guitar that you're playing back on a record that you appreciate. And so, really dive into that too. Like, put up a mic, get it mic'd up, get it coming out of the speakers, and immediately listen to the reference track, and then listen to your guitar and keep messing with it until you start to get there. So picking the right guitar, picking the right amp is really important. If you're using an in the box guitar amp, then to be honest, you might have an easier time of getting that bright sound, because you won't have some of the obstacles of the physical mic, the amp, and the stuff in your recording chain that might be a limitation. So those tend to try and be pretty bright already. But once you get it captured, or before you actually get there, if you're putting a mic on a guitar amp, the next thing to consider is, is your mic actually too close to the guitar amp? So you're going to get a low frequency boost, the proximity effect, when you're taking a 57 mic and just going right up to the speaker grill. And that can be great for certain kinds of sounds, but it's a very classic move with a mic on a bass amp or a mic on a guitar amp to actually turn down the low end of the amp, and even turn up the brightness on the amp until you get it bright enough. So do all those things first. And then the next things that can really help you out are simplifying your signal chain. So if you're going through a lot of stuff, you might actually explore just the microphone on a single mic cable straight into the mic pre on your interface, and that might actually give you a clean signal recording path. And then once you're actually in and recorded, you may still need to do more of a low cut filter as part of your recording process. And then it's it's a gain thing too. So sometimes the just the level, just having a good hot signal, whether you record it in that way or whether you boost it in the mix process, and making sure that the guitar is loud enough can be the difference. Because if you it's easy to fool yourself too. So if you listen to your song and then later you go listen to a produced song, you can have this perception of stuff that can be misleading. So if you want to really compare your guitar tone to another, listen very quickly between the two, so that you can really hear, oh, is mine much quieter? Oh, is mine just much, much, much darker than the other one?
Yeah.
Let me know if that helps at all.
Oh no, that was good stuff there, and a lot of good tips in there. So I'll summarize as well. And look, as Psycho 7 said, I've never actually mic'd an amp, which I
Okay,
think is
great.
very common these days, running direct into a door. But yeah, even if you're using an amp simulator, all those rules apply. Most amp simulators have mic placement. They definitely have bass and treble controls and brightness controls. So yeah, you can
Yeah.
follow all of those same tips when
And
you're
the
using a
level
virtual
of the
amp.
guitar going into the amp simulator.
Mm,
That's a tricky one. I don't know the exact appropriate level, but I would potentially start with, if your DAW, if Pro Tools is set up for a -18 level, you might explore sending your guitar signal in at -18 to hit the plug-in just right. You have to sort of find the sweet spot. I find I tend to have to turn up the gain significantly to get the guitar amp to sound normal.
yeah, I'm the same. Like if I've got a microphone plugged in, because I use just a one or two channel interface for a lot of my GarageBand recordings, and if I've got a mic in and then I go to put a guitar in, you switch it to instrument mode, and I normally have to crank that sucker right around to 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
4 o'clock to get enough gain, whereas a microphone might be the other way around at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, because you really don't need that extra
Yeah.
gain for
Yeah,
vocals. So
good lesson is don't be too low on the way in and don't be
mm,
too hot on the way in. But and then
yeah.
not to get stuck on this question, but when you
Mm,
say a pre-made track, maybe you can drop in a comment and let us know what's an
mm.
example of the one that sounds so good to you.
Yeah, great idea. So, yeah, just to summarize, we'll move to the next one, but to summarize, starting with the right sound, getting it right at the source, our old buddy Joe Gilda's favorite tip. Reference tracks, and if you're not familiar with reference track, that means bringing in the track you want your guitar to sound like, bring that into your session, and then have that there that you can solo and unsolo to hear the sound of the tone that you're actually going for. Choosing the right guitar and the right amp in the box is often easier. Yeah, mic might be too close, getting that proximity effect, that low down sound. Turning down the low end and turning up the brightness, and simplify, man. Yeah, just get a
Simplify.
cable, plug it straight in. Don't go through. A lot of people go through. I'm going through my DI and then through my mixer and then out to my interface, and it's like you're giving yourself 3 or 4 analog points there where things can go wrong and gain cannot be set right. So yeah, some excellent tips there. So thank you for sharing. There you go. You're gonna keep dialing exactly, and trial and error. Again, you're in a digital system. You're not paying an hourly fee for Lij Shaw to produce your track. So while it's in your own studio, just go ahead and do your thing. Let's jump to our next question. I'll take that one off. Many Vibes would like to know what your favorite toy is. Now you can interpret this in a couple of ways. Is it a favorite studio toy? Is it the Teletubby behind you? But
The espresso machine that's in the other room. I'm already empty. It was that good.
oh, see, you're gonna have to have like a halfway espresso break, Lich, to go back
I
on.
can tell you what my favorite toy is right now too, and I'm
Mm.
gonna I'm gonna move my camera so I can show you
Oh,
because I
nice.
just installed
Ooh,
it. So I
that's
just got the SSL UF8 in here,
ooh.
and that is paired up with the UC1, and I am learning it. So I'm figuring it out. So this is going to let me control Pro Tools. It's got a whole bunch of great features in it. You've got all your faders, you got all your usual stuff like solo, cut, selecting channels, pan knobs here. There's a whole bunch of soft keys down here, which will do things like call up, I think, the first 5 send slots or the first 5 plugin slots in Pro Tools. And even more exciting is that the SSL plugins, the Channel Strip 2 and
Yeah.
the 4KB, I think that's the full name. That one, both of those are SSL channel strip plugins, and those will pop right up, and all the knobs and the controls match perfectly on the screen. You've also got the bus
Wow.
compressor there, and then compression and gates and stuff like that, and you can pop them in and out of bypass really easily. So pretty excited about this, and
Yeah.
really looking forward to. Sorry about the crazy camera work here.
No, it's good.
So
We
let me
like
get
it.
back
We
on.
like the low tech stuff. We've seen the most high tech controller with the most low tech way of just like, here's the
Exactly.
webcam, here's the camera. No, that's super cool. And I did notice, and I was going to mention it later, but you went to NAM back in earlier in the year, and I saw a bunch of interviews, including one with folks from SSL. So yeah, if you want to check out, if you can't get to NAM, which is the National Association of Music Manufacturers, what's this?
Merchandisers maybe, or
Merchandise.
manufacturers or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so the NAM show, which is where all of the cool people with all the cool kit come and show it
Yeah,
off. And Lij was there this year, and you did about 20 plus videos. You talked to Audience and
we did a
Spitfire
bunch.
and
Yeah, we did a
Isotope,
bunch
and
again.
yeah,
It's fun.
that's
It's really fun. I like doing that stuff. To me, that's like taking the love of music and just making it a love of making videos at a music event for
yeah.
a few days.
So very cool.
Gotta
So that, yeah,
straighten this out.
yeah, and if you're not familiar, by the way, if you, because a lot of our audience, we have a vast array of folks here. But if you're wondering, what is all that for? That's good. That looks to me like the perfect connection between being in the box and out of the box, because you've almost got a lot of the controls you'd have on a console, but you're talking directly to your software, and
That's
you've got kind of
exactly
the
it.
best of both worlds there.
So I came up in the world of analog first, and well, digital pretty quickly because we had ADATs in the first studio I was at, but there was always a console and a mixer. So all the
Yeah,
mixing was done through an actual analog board. Everything was patched one way or the other and routed that way. And then everything just moved over into the box and ended up in Pro Tools. And then for a long time, Pro Tools really couldn't handle mixing fully. And so you were still halfway in, halfway out, trying to figure it out. And then finally, in the last decade or something like that, it became really, really clear that you could just make a great sounding mix right inside Pro Tools.
yeah,
But the thing that was lost and left behind, the baby that was thrown out with the bathwater, so to speak, was the immediacy of mixing. So it
yeah,
used to be very, a very, as fast as you could move and make decisions, you could do things. And if you're quick with the mouse, you can do a lot of things quickly. But there's something about grabbing faders and,
yeah,
especially when you're pulling up multi mics on a drums, just like pushing things around really quickly, and like it's like you're quickly making these parts and these instruments loud and these ones soft, and then you're switching it, and you can really discover very quickly what the sound of something is. And the EQ stuff too, being able to grab knobs and quickly sculpt it. For me, the biggest version of that was always doing the Bonnaroo Hay Bale Studios. Bonnaroo is our big
yeah,
festival an hour south of Nashville, and for 15 years, I would take down a mobile studio. We actually take this studio and we just make a mobile version and take it down there. And I'd have a whole analog mixer, and then all the band is out in the recording space, and all those mics come in, and all the mixing had to happen in real time while the band was playing the song. I had to make all my
yeah,
decisions and all my balances, and those mixes just sound fantastic. And like 3.5 minutes later, the mix is done.
yeah.
And so it's my goal to spend 3.5 minutes mixing a song instead of 3.5 days in the studio.
Wow, which, yeah, and it's amazing. I remember following that back in the days when you're doing Bonnaroo, and you'd say things like, yeah, you'd have to mix it in real time with the band there. The band would sort of walk out, and then you'd get the mix down, and you'd have it to the radio stations to play it like within hours of the band actually leaving the studio. And I'm like, wow, that's phenomenal. When you think of the days and weeks and months, a lot of folks, even in the home studio, that we just, every little detail and every little tweak, and you're like, guess what? When you got to get it done on the day, you got to get it done. So
Yeah, and it's
very cool.
the tools too. It's like I'm in search of that ultimate way of mixing quickly. So if you pick up a guitar, or if you play a real piano or something like that, or if you play real drums, you get it.
Yeah,
You make your instrument, you make the sound. There's the sound. It'll sound
yeah.
different the way you record it, but the creation of the music is fast. And as far as I'm concerned, the creation of the production and the mixing should be just as fast as playing an instrument.
Awesome. Good advice there. Now, you've already answered this, I guess, in the fact that you mentioned Pro Tools a few times in your last answer.
Yeah.
But have you, so basically, since you've been in digital, you've been using Pro Tools. Have you experimented with other DAWs? Have you ever been tempted to switch to another DAW?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, definitely. I've been tempted by the switch. I've never done the switch. What I've found is that I enjoy learning the other DAWs, so that I know them when I need to use them. That's the best way. I mean, there's a lot of,
Yeah,
there's different stuff. If you sum it up really in a really generalized way, I'd say Pro Tools is the industry leader for the professional studio and has been. They've got the market share, so they've been around forever. If
yeah,
you want to do records that come and go from other pro studios, you have to do Pro Tools and know how to do that. Logic is a great composer DAW because it comes in your Mac computer. You can buy it one time. You've got
yeah,
all the updates, all the upgrades. You have all the plugins you want. You've got instruments in there. It's an incredible way to make music. Of course, that pairs up perfectly with GarageBand and iOS mobile stuff, which you're an expert on, Pete. So that is a really good place to go if you want to make music that way.
yeah.
There's lots of other options too. Of course, Cubase is an incredible production tool too. Chris Salim over at Mixdown Online has a great channel where he really teaches you how to use that. That I think also comes with lots of plugins and lots of software instruments.
Yeah.
Studio One, PreSonus came along and it was amazing, and still is. And I've done a bunch of stuff over there and really like the way it sounds. It's fun to actually discover how each DAW can sound a little different. It's not that I don't think about them sounding different in a sciencey kind of way, like a white lab coat kind of measurement way. I think about them in terms of if you go and like make a song real quick and then what you end up with. And they do sound different. If I just bust out a guitar and start recording something in Pro Tools or Logic, or I've done it in Studio One, they all come back sounding a little different in a cool, unique way, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is that people get caught up on the whole what is the best. And I think you're spot on that. Yeah, if you want to work with pro studios, it's a bit like in video editing. If you want to work with pro video editing, you've got to learn either Final Cut if it's a Mac shop or Premiere if it's an Adobe shop. You don't really have a choice. Even though there's some great alternatives like DaVinci Resolve and other things for video editing, you got to learn the industry standard if you want to work with an industry. But if you're a solo person, like if you're just recording in your home studio, you've got ultimate choice of whatever's going to work for you. And that's what I always say is when someone says, what's the best DAW? I'm like, firstly, it's what's the best DAW for you. And secondly, it's going to depend. Your answer is going to be different to someone else. So try a few out and see what works for you. And then you'll find your workflow and you'll go from there. That's my experience.
You definitely want something that's going to stick around. I think most of the big ones that we hear about today are going to be sticking around anyway. And then I didn't mention Ableton Live. Ableton Live is a really, really good choice. If you're into looping and electronic music at all, that's definitely the way to go. And then, FL Studio is I think, I see that mostly in the hip hop world.
If you want to go make some fly beats, and you can go use FL. I love whenever I get like a hip hop producer that's like, I produce only in FL, and I'm like, you use Fruity Loops. That's adorable. I love Fruity Loops. I'm like, it's not so cool when you remember that it was called Fruity Loops to begin with. Princess LDG has a question, and Princess LDG, she mentioned this. She's in our Discord server, and she mentioned to me this morning she's just learning guitar, and she has the opposite problem to me with the sausage fingers. She has very small hands. Now you've played guitar for a long time, Lij. You've probably worked with people playing guitar, female artists in particular with smaller hands. Any tips that you've experienced?
Well, this is all impromptu. This is extemporaneous, my tips here. But I would say, in other words, I haven't already successfully answered this question for anybody. But I think that there's a couple of things to think about. If it was not a tiny hands question, then a lot of times people say when fingering is tricky, it's much easier to play the voicings on a classical nylon string guitar, but that's a bigger neck. So I don't know if that would help you out. I think there are smaller scale guitars. There's 3/4 neck guitars, which are shorter, small scale. There are necks where the strings come closer together. And then if you're interested in playing, of course, there's alternate instruments. There's like ukulele, which is a great one to have an easier time with the fingering. And there's, if you're going to play and you like the sound of steel strings, try putting light electric guitar strings on your guitar. It's much, much easier to play. It doesn't change the distance that you have to move your hands, but it will help if you feel like these strings are like, if you feel like you're, pressing rocks when you're trying to, play a chord on a guitar.
And it probably relates to part 2 of Prince's question is I hear that playing guitar on electric is easier than acoustic. Is that true? What would you say to that?
Definitely. Well, they're different instruments.
Yeah.
That's my answer. Acoustic, there's different ways of playing acoustic. There's different, you strum an acoustic in a way that you wouldn't necessarily strum an electric.
Yeah.
It's not totally different, but what will happen is it's very typical to start learning on an acoustic and then you go over to play the electric and you feel like you're like, just like dinosaur stomping coming out of the guitar speaker. And it's because electric there's a lot more finesse, goes a lot further. So small motions can make big sounds come out of the speaker. So you begin to learn. I never learned about a power chord until I was on an electric guitar because all of a sudden 2 notes, a root and a fifth, can sound them like a massive sound instead of needing to strum all 6 strings.
Yeah.
And the all 6 strings lesson is a great one to learn no matter what you're playing. Just because there's 6 strings on the guitar does not mean you're supposed to play all 6 of them at once,
Yes.
that is.
Yes. It's so true, and yeah, there's a couple of points there that I totally relate to. The acoustic tool, I'm about a 90% acoustic, 10% electric player, just because I love picking up an acoustic and having a strum. And then the occasions that I'll pick up an electric, especially something like a Stratocaster, and I'll just like dig in, and I'm like, oh wow, that sounds just awful, because you start digging in like you would on a steel string acoustic, and yeah, it's not going to sound good. So you do have to be a lot more delicate on the electric than you do on the acoustic. And yeah, it's a good question though, and I think because I learned on like a nylon, and I think this is the thing. Like my daughter's learning at the moment, and she's learning on a nylon string 3/4 guitar, and I go to play that, and I'm like, my goodness, my 10-year-old, 11-year-old now has to press like twice as hard as I do to make a note. And I'm like, I want to get her like a little 3/4 Strat copy, because I reckon she'd be able to shred on that compared to these big chunky nylon strings that they make kids learn on. So yeah, I don't know.
And that's what we used to do. One of our tricks was putting electric strings on an acoustic guitar back in the day, and it makes everything light and fluffy and easy to play. And easy on the fingers too. Your fingers will hurt. That's one of the tricky things about learning guitar.
Yeah. Oh, her guitar teacher's going to be surprised. She'll rock up and she'll have some nice light gauge electric strings on her nylon string acoustic, and they'll be like, "What have you done? What did your dad do here?" DT, hello to you. It says, boys are like that you're talking about failure as part of creating.
Oh, yeah.
Look, Lij and I have failed more times than we care to admit.
There's a great quote. I think it was supposed to be Lee Iacocca or somebody who I think was the CEO of Chrysler or something like that back in the day. But it was I'll give you the recipe for success: double your rate of failure. And doubling doesn't even sound like enough. So the whole beauty about failing is learning that failing is not a loss; it's a win. So in other words, in order to get to the right answer, you have to fail your way there. And so the more you fail, the faster you're moving, and the more likely you're going to get to the right answer on something.
Spot on. I like to say micro failures, macro success. Because
there you go.
The more small fails you have, the more you know what's not working, and the more you can try. It's why people that work for my mantra on this channel is create, record, release. Because so many people are doing the creating and the recording, they'll never finishing and releasing a song. So they'd go back and create and record again and make the exact same mistakes that they made the last song, because they never released it, they never got the feedback, and they never learned what they weren't doing right. So they weren't failing properly. So yeah, you gotta fail.
That's
fail
good tip. That's good tip.
Question from Neither says, what do you do when your mind is blank and you can't think of any melodies or chord progressions? What are your tips for that songwriter's block, Lij?
So that's fair. It's true. Sometimes I don't hear melodies, but usually I hear. Usually I can come up with chords and melodies quickly, and it's the lyric that's a challenge for me. So do pop in another note and let us know whether lyrics are easy for you. But I think that one of the great things about knowing what to do with chords. So for me, an example would be you sit down and you pick up the guitar, and you like, I want to do some guitar, and so you pick it up, and then you play that same chord. And you're like, oh, I'm so sick of playing that A bar chord at the second fret. I always do that. So it's easy to get stuck on things that are muscle memory in the instrument too. So there's multiple ways to handle this. One is switch instruments, pick up a different instrument. If you're a guitar player and you go to the piano, you're going to be like, wow, that sounds really different, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So switching things up can be great. Another way to switch up chords on a guitar very easily, if that's where your challenges are, is get a capo. Grab a capo, stick it halfway up the neck, play the same chords, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, these sound so different to me today. They sound really cool. This is a cool way to do it." Another thing is go get an app. I forget what the app is, but anyway, I've got where is it? Somewhere nearby. I've got a circle of fifths that I just got. So start studying again. Get the circle of fifths. Get one of those apps. I'll see if I can find it. I think it's called Tonally, Tonally, and that one is an app that here it is. Don't know if you can see it. Oops, it's a warning screen. How do you like a warning screen? So it looks you probably can't really see it great on here, but it looks like a circle of fifths a little bit.
Oh,
There
yeah.
you go. And you
Oh,
see the
yeah.
chords. So then you can just click on them. Like that. And so when you give yourself these easy ways to discover chords and then try out weird things, like the auto harp, the digital auto harp and stuff like that, and they have the chord buttons, and you just play them in weird orders, and it can really help you discover progressions that sound cool to you. So that can be helpful. Remembering also what Pete said, there's only, everybody's got the same limited number of chords. So maybe don't beat yourself up that much about chord progressions. They're actually
Yeah.
pretty damn simple when you break them down,
True that. Yeah. Oh,
you've
there you go.
got,
They play piano.
verse progression, a chorus progression, and see how it goes. And then, but I will take it a little bit further than that, because this recently came up in a songwriting thing where I was teaching this, and a buddy of mine were talking about this too. We both, unbeknownst to each other, had gone to the St. Louis Art Museum and sat in front of paintings, and then started writing poetry based on what we saw in the painting, just descriptive stuff. And that can become really great lyrical ideas for working on a song. So put yourself in a strange environment. I find that really helpful. If I go back to the same, all right, I'll keep riffing here. I know we got to move forward.
No, good.
But one of the challenges we have is this technology. This computer, I'm in my studio right now. I'm looking at my studio computer. This is my creative space. But one of the things that it also can be is email. I could pay my bills here. I could have incoming messages from my aunt, or something like that, from family. My kid could be binging me and telling me that I got to do something. It could be my whole screen could be filled up with a health insurance application. So the point is, none of those things are what I sat down to make music with. So putting yourself in new locations where you get inspired because everything's a little bit different can be really helpful. So if you're having trouble with the blank mind thing, take your guitar, go sit somewhere else, and see what comes out.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it. And yeah, I guess especially for mobile creators, those of us that create on our phones and our iPads, it's the ultimate way to do that, because everyone, and even if you don't, like I think we talked about it last time you were on the show, but everyone has voice memos, everyone has something on their phone that you can capture something. So as soon as you are out there and you're in the art museum, you're out in the park looking at the trees or the birds or the ducks, and you get an idea, just start taking it down. I've got all sorts of weird, undecipherable voice memos on my phone that if I ever get bored or stuck, I'll just go to those and be like, oh, I don't even remember saying or singing this little thing into here, but hey, that's kind of cool. I'll go check it out. We have many vibes asking what it was. This is the app that Lij was talking about, Tonally, Tonally. Looks like it's on Mac and iOS. Is it? iOS
yeah, and I think you can write songs in there. And again, I'm no expert with this. I don't use it as much as I thought I would, but just having that ability to even just go hit some of those chord variations and hear them, that could be enough to say like, oh, well, let me go learn that chord progression on an acoustic and go from there,
Yeah.
But you can write out the songs there. And you know what? It reminds me, I've been reteaching myself guitar. I'm taking lessons now. I'm devouring videos on modal playing and scales and improvising over jazz progressions and arpeggios. And I'm going to start putting some progressions into this app and see if I can use it as a jam along app.
Love it. I must admit, I hit my wall of guitar skills about 3 years ago, and I haven't progressed. And every time I play, I'm like, yeah, I think I need some actual practical teaching for myself now, because I've kind of hit that point where I need a little bit more. You were mentioning Chris Salim before. If you don't know Chris, a very nice guy and a really great creator and teacher. And if you're into Cubase, but even if you're not, he covers a lot of the stuff that a lot of us do in terms of the gear and the techniques. And he's got the coolest accent too. I could listen to Chris talk for days at a time. So go and check out Chris Salim.
I got another one. If you got another question lined up, go for it. But I got another really cool app to tell you about.
Let's jump straight into that. I'll just say we've got questions here from Electric Owl Works, from Thomas Christ, from Many Vibes, and from Neither. So I've already tagged your questions, so don't go anywhere. We'll answer those, but let's hear another cool app from Lij.
So when I was at AES, which is another conference like the NAMM conference, and that happened this fall in New York, I learned about, and I think actually just because I picked up a magazine and read about it, but it was this app called Koala.
Oh yes, the koala
and it's
sampler.
really, really hip. And you can just instantly sample a sound. So let me see if I can do, I'll make a new, I gotta put on my, pardon the reading glasses, Rockstars. Make a new one here. Save it first. Sure. So here we go. Studio live today. Studio live studio today live studio today live. So you can just like
That's super
instantly
cool.
start composing stuff, go capture ideas, put melodies in there and stuff like that, and then just sequence it out. So let me see. I don't know if I have my studio live today live today live today live. Let me go into the remixer. Today live today
Oh, oh.
Anyway,
Oh, that is
it
I
probably
must
sounds
admit,
a little wacky right now. I wasn't quite ready to deliver that
no,
perfectly
that's
just
for an
then, but
impromptu tutorial. That's pretty good, Lij. Yeah, look, I've used Koala a few times. I know, actually a lot of folks in this community. Mars Capone, who's one of my Patreons, he creates whole songs in Koala
oh,
Sampler
that's
and
great. I want
does
to hear that.
amazing stuff. And one of our moderators here and fellow creator Jade Starr, she's done a whole video, whole hour session going through Koala Sampler
Oh,
and
really,
making
Jade? You're
music
in
in
this
Koala.
chat right now, right? Didn't I
Yeah,
see your
yeah,
name? So,
Jade's
so
one of our
post a
wonderful
link. Drop a link to one of your
well, look,
stuff. Let's check it out.
here you go. I'll do that. I'll do the favor. Jay's normally moderating my channel, so I'm going to do her a favor and put a link to her tutorial on that one as well.
Right
But
on.
yeah, very very cool. You can grab it on the App Store and play around with it because yeah, and again, it's great for capturing ideas. But my kids love it as well. So they've made entire songs because again, they're just walking around and they'll just hit a rock with a stick and then go and whack a trash can and just make sounds, and you can build your own like cool little drum kit, sampled drum kits in
Yeah.
there, and yeah, it's excellent stuff. I dig it. There you go. There is Jade Star. There is our
Now we got some
wonderful
more
moderator.
questions about chords from Princess. I see there too. I'm getting ahead of
Yeah.
myself.
We'll tag that one. Yes, I've grabbed that one there. We'll do them in order because I know we've had folks that have waited a while for their questions to ask. Thomas Christ, also one of our moderators on the channel. What would you say is the most important piece of gear to have to achieve pro quality sound? Skills aside, of course. Yeah, that's interesting. What do you reckon?
Here you go. Your ears right there. Your
Hey.
ears. You just got to listen carefully and make sure that the decisions you're making are ones that you're putting your stamp of approval once you actually hit something that sounds great. That's a good place to start. But something more practical, something more useful. That's like, you know, your parents telling you, you just need to work harder. You just need to get up on time for school. Um, is you know, like I have a lot of great gear in my studio. It's pretty over the top and
Mhm.
it's a lot of fun to do as a studio. But quite honestly, I also have like, you know, this one interface, the PreSonus HD 192 or the 192, I think it was the studio. Um, I remember doing some stuff with that where I just plugged a mic straight in, and it's so simple. It's just
Mhm.
microphone, high quality mic cable straight into the interface. And I did even a mic cable shootout.
Mhm.
And you know, I know this will probably open up a can of worms for some people, but I swear listening to the different cables I had and then listening to this one really nice cable from Wire World on an acoustic guitar I was playing, I could definitely hear the difference in the headphones. And
Mhm.
so my point of saying that is just having a high quality interface and one high quality mic cable and one decent condenser mic or a dynamic mic or whatever you've got could be the easiest answer for you about you know, choosing a most important piece of gear to capture a really good sound.
Mhm.
I also have great monitoring now here in my studio. Here, I'll show you. I'll turn it around again. This
Yeah.
is the I worked with a studio designer named Carl Tatz, and he came in and put his
Ooh.
phantom focus system in here. Look, oh my gosh, we're
Oh,
tripping, we're tripping.
Doctor Who.
There we go. Doctor Who.
Ooh.
And then there's the other one. And look, I put up lights for you guys so that you could
I
see.
say you got
But
the pro
there's
lighting.
stereo subwoofers and everything. These are really high end. They sound really incredible in the studio. Sounds really great as a result now. And the point of saying that is now that I have monitoring that sounds really good, it makes it a lot easier for me to make decisions and mixing choices and stuff like that. However, that's the expensive way to go. If you want to go less expensive and figure out how to have a really great sounding studio, then get yourself a pair of headphones and learn them and trust them that way. Because that, like I said about my interview with Andrew Sheps, that will allow you to, learn how to make really smart decisions with the audio with nothing more than a pair of headphones. And as long as you can capture great sounds, the rest of it you can kind of figure out. It's like if you get a really good recording of your acoustic or your guitar or your voice in there by using a good mic, a good cable, and a simple chain, then you got plenty of time to practice screwing it up in the mix and messing it up and then doing it again and getting it right.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. Let me know if
Absolutely.
that helps.
Very, well, I like it. It's a good answer. It's a simple answer because I think some people just think, oh, he's going to say you need the Apollo Twin, spend $600 on an interface to just to record a guitar sound, and it's
I
like
bet
you
the Apollo
generally
Twin
don't.
sounds amazing. I actually don't have any of the UAD stuff, but
No.
yeah, I know it sounds great, and I've been told that a million times.
Yeah.
And if you
But
want a really not expensive, I mean, a not inexpensive mic cable, the Wire World Oasis sounds incredible, and you will be spending money on a single mic cable, but you'll probably love it.
I just did a quick. Oh, gee, that's scary. I just did a quick. Don't Google it if it's Christmas time for you and you don't even have a lot of wallet
It's
stability right now.
somewhere it's somewhere in the vicinity of $250 for one XLR cable.
Yeah, and I think for folks that for starting out, my advice would just be don't
Right.
buy the $5 one on Amazon, buy the $30 one on Amazon. Like
Yeah, buy
go
a
go a
short
couple of
one.
levels up. Yes, and a short
Save your
cable,
money, spend less money, buy a short one, and
short
get
good
that
quality cable.
microphone close to the input. If you could
Yep.
take the microphone and connect it directly to the input, it would sound as good as the most high quality cable out there. If $1 million mic cable,
Yep.
that's all the high end mic cables are trying to do is make it sound as good as if it's connected directly in.
Spot on. No, it's good. And yeah, I think a lot of people miss that point because we think digital these days where it's like an on-off situation. Like you plug an HDMI cable in and the signal's generally either going through or it's not. Whereas when you're doing an analog, it's still got to get the analog signal to your converter to convert it to digital. And the more run you have, the more cables, the more analog gear you're going through, the more likelihood you're going to have noise and the poorer quality signal, which is,
Yeah,
I probably learnt that from you, Lij. I probably learnt that years ago
in
from you.
fact, I'll add to that and I'll say that the good news for everybody is that if you have a decent enough microphone, which means just not a, if it's not a crappy, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything negative about the gear because somebody's gonna be like, that's the only one I got. But I mean, if you're spending even a few $100 on a microphone and you've got a decent condenser mic, like a Roswell Pro Audio, for example, very affordable microphones. JZ Microphones makes great microphones as well. That one, what it's capturing is very high quality, and it's your job not to screw it up from the mic into the computer. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So just know that a lot of the challenges, like in other words, you already have really great sounding gear. It's just your job not to lose the quality. Once you lose it, you can't get it back,
Yeah, I'm surprised none of these mic manufacturers made really high quality USB mics because surely that's got to have no cable run then straight into digital with the converter right built in. But no one's made a USB mic that has a
Yeah, I don't
decent
know. I mean,
interface
there's
or
certainly
converter.
ones. Apogee makes a USB mic, and there's
Yeah,
certainly, Lewitt, I think, does too. And those are high
yeah,
quality, but I think it's always that like difference between who's going to use this.
yeah.
The person who spends a lot of money on a mic, are they also the person that just wants the USB straight in? Or are they
It's
like, well,
true.
I'm going to run this through my Neve mic pre and all that kind of stuff.
It would be a very very small niche. It would be
Yeah.
like podcasters and maybe live streamers, and that's about it. Solo podcasters. We'll jump to a few more questions because we've got a few more that have dropped on in here. We've asked Thomas's, so I'm going to remove that one. Sorry about that. Electric Owlworks has an interesting one. If Lij could go in the Wayback Machine and buy one instrument or piece of gear vibe that is now vintage and stupid expensive, what would it be?
Let's see, one instrument or piece of gear. If I was going to get an instrument, I think I want to just go get this vintage and stupid expensive. I want a really nice Gibson 335. So that might not be too expensive, but that's definitely a next on the list for me. And if it was a piece of gear, what would be a piece of gear? Boy, I'd sure love to have like a BCM 10 just sitting right here, roll around, a Neve, just a 10 channel unit full of Neve 1073s. I mean, I have some wonderful API mic pre's in here. The 3122V is right over there, and the T12 and T25 tube pre's and compressors, and then the Spectra 1964. Those are really wonderful. I wish I had those all in mixer form. So that would be a next level for me is getting those into mixer form. Now, in all fairness, I just went from analog mixer world to digital world. So I'm trying to embrace the whole digital revolution, but I also want to get all my sounds into the computer the best way. And I think soon I'll have the SSL Big 6 in the studio, so I'll be using that as a analog going into digital interface as well. So I'm excited about that.
Very cool. Where are we at now in terms of analog? Because there's very few people, I guess, still completely outside of the box, but there's a few people that are still
we got them
there.
right here in Nashville, man. We got them right here in Nashville.
Okay.
We're old school.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, there's who's the producer that famously still is on tape, still recording to tape?
Steve Albini is known for that for sure.
Yeah. So and again, if it works for you, I guess it's the whole thing. Like we were talking before. It's like, if something's working for you, if it ain't broke and you're making good records. And
it sounds great. I'm going to also remind us of this, that comment I made about the sound is pure and it's our job not to notch it down before we get to listen to it. And I hate to say it, but it is a reminder to us. The very act of going digital is a form of notching it, taking it down a notch, because digital does not sound as good or as high fidelity as the mic going straight through the signal chain to the speaker. And if you can figure out how to do this in your home studio, it's probably doable. You may have to explore how you would hook it up. But give yourself a chance to take one of your microphones. Don't do it in the same room as the speakers because you don't want feedback. But take one of your microphones, take your signal chain, hook it up so that it's going to go through your computer and then on your way to your monitors. And then take the very same signal and hook it up where it's the same mic and mic preamp if you've got it, but it goes straight to your speakers. And listen to the difference. And you'll probably be struck by, if you get the levels matched enough, you'll be struck at how much of a good signal chain you've already got.
All about the converters.
How does that make sense?
No, that's it probably just depressed everyone now. They're just like, oh no. Now I'm just gonna be sitting there going, I don't want everything.
You can always pick up a 4-track cassette and just go.
There you go.
Again.
I've got one of those upstairs.
That's how we did all the cool records.
Yeah. Hey, it was all right for the Beatles. They recorded on tape on 4 tracks. Well, not the Tascam Porter studio, but in the ballpark. We're at the halfway point here. Have you got time to hang out? I know I said
absolutely.
Hang for a couple of hours. We've got a few more questions.
I'm just getting started.
Plenty more coming in. So I did say to Lij, I'm like, we're not gonna struggle to fill a couple of hours because both of us can definitely string a word together here and there. But I did want to just remind folks, if you're just joining us and you're here at the halfway point, go and watch the first half. But more importantly, jump on over here. It's linked down in the description. It's also pinned there at the top of the chat. Go over to Recording Studio Rockstars. Save yourself some time. Go subscribe now because you're going to want to dive in there. You've probably got about 3 weeks worth of content. If you listen to every episode on that channel of Recording Studio Rockstars from the very start, you could spend a lot of time there. And I actually, don't tell Lij, oh wait, it's right there. Don't tell Lij this, but I love re-listening to old episodes when I'm going to bed because I'm the sort of person, I just love voices in my ears. So Lij actually serenades me with his dulcet tones as I'm going to sleep, and I'll listen to old episodes with folks from the past. I was listening to one with Ian Shepherd the other day. Speaking of not getting things, because Ian Shepherd's he's a mastering engineer, and his big thing is do no harm in mastering. And what Lij's message today has kind of been, do no harm to your wonderful analog single by destroying it on the way through. So so I highly recommend that. Subscribe to the podcast too, because if you're an audio person, which you probably are watching this show, then subscribe on your Apple Podcasts or your Spotify, wherever you find your good podcasts. But jump over there and do that. Let's say good day to a few folks who have dropped on in beforehand, and then we will jump back over. Ashley HM, hello to you. Johnny A says Eventide and Lexicon rocks. Make some good stuff. Stomp boxes are fun and cool. There you go. Cold Acre, how are you doing? He'd go back and buy an analog synth from the early 70s.
Oh,
there you go. Those things are worth
squillions. I'm going to start using that word now, squillions.
Squillions of dollars. I like it. Hello to Sion, who's joined us here. Another one of our cool moderators in the channel here. Gregor S. Sullivan.
It's not from the 70s, but there's my synth land over there.
There you
those
go.
Behringer modulars.
Oh.
So in the meantime, if you don't have squillions, check those out because they sound great.
Yes, we can if you're lacking in the squillions like the rest of us. Let's jump in and continue with some of these questions that are coming on in here. This is an interesting one from Neither. Lij, how did you and your guitar meet each other?
Excellent question, Neither. So how did we meet? I think we met because I was on the porch at my family reunion. My family would always get together every summer up on Lake Michigan, and my uncle was a real like cowboy guitar, crooner. And he just showed me one summer, he'd do these finger picking things. And I was curious. And he's like, Lij, here's the first 3 chords you need to know to play a song on a guitar. And he showed me E, A, and B7. And so I was like, all right. He gave me a 1, 4, 5. And I just like started playing that, went home. And then when my birthday came up, a month later, my dad took me down to the store and bought me my first guitar. And I got a nylon string.
There you go.
I don't have tiny hands, but I got a nylon string guitar. And then after that, I was like, geez, Cat Stevens, that doesn't quite sound like a nylon string guitar. I think I need a steel string guitar. So then I went and got an Ovation guitar after that.
Oh, I love an Ovation. Yeah.
And then my first electric, this was great. I went down to, I grew up in Boston. So I was, the big music store was like, was it Daddy's or something like that? It was, I think that might be right. Yeah. And it was down near Berkeley School of Music. And so I went down there and I got a Kramer Striker 100 ST metal red hockey neck with a Floyd Rose tremolo whammy bar on it and one pickup and one volume knob. And that was it. People used to make fun of me because I had one volume knob.
Simplicity. See, you were doing things the simple way all the way back then.
Learning those power chords.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's very cool. So it's interesting. So if you're here in the chat, let us know your first guitar. Feel free to share your first guitar story. Was it a nylon string 3/4 like most of us, or did you go straight in? I worry these days that a lot of these kids, like the ones that are like YouTubers, they're like, oh, I started learning guitar. I just bought myself, like a vintage Fender, so I started learning. I'm like, I don't think you should be learning on a vintage Fender. I think you should have to go to the School of Hard Knocks like the rest of us do.
Yeah, mine was a Sears and Roebuck Silvertone with a busted in front that had been glued back together.
That's what you should have. You should have to earn your stripes on that. Psycho 7, there's a comment from a while ago. Once sat at a picnic table at midnight with a guitar and a bottle of Jack and wrote a blues ditty that 20 years later I still like noodling. So yeah, there you go.
Right on.
Some of the best things come from, like Lij was saying before, just put yourself in a different situation and a couple of adult beverages.
Brass tacks though, did you release it?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. What did you do with it? Did you finish a song? Did you create, record, and release? Follow up from Princess LDG. So it's an interesting one. You're just talking about the chord numbers and the 1-4-5 there. Transitioning from a verse to a bridge to a chorus. I mean, getting a bit technical and into the weeds, I guess.
Not that hard. Bridge is easy. Bridge is easy.
Yep.
The quick gimme for going to a bridge is try the 6 minor.
Yeah.
But that takes the bridge minor, so it changes the mood of the song. From a verse to a chorus, again, there's probably a million answers to that. But there was an artist I played with here, and he always went to the 4 chord on the chorus.
Mm.
So there you go. Try that. Start it.
How
about build your verse off of 1, go to a 4 chord in the chorus, and then try a 6 minor in the bridge and see how far they get to.
Hey, it's classic. What is it? There's the Axis of Awesome song where they have the 1-4-5-6 minor, and it's like how many pop songs have been written that have exactly that chord progression? It's everything from Oasis to to I've forgotten all of them now. Many songs, many songs, but good question there. Here's one from X Midwest. Speaking of the Midwest, do any of you mix with a sub for less acoustically treated rooms? Hello, everyone. By the way, mixing with a sub, so a subwoofer as part of your speaker setup. Do you have one in your studio there at all, Lij?
I have two in my studio. However,
There
they're
you go.
professionally installed and they are
Yeah.
accurate from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. I used to have one and I had it in the center and I did my very best to set it up. It's tricky. I think the answer is you're going to get a lot of mileage out of learning how to mix in the mid range first. So I just did an interview with Damian Taylor, who has worked with Bjork and lots of other artists and does a lot of big sounding mixes that are combinations of acoustic instruments and electronic stuff, and they have big bass and 808 stuff and all that kind of thing. And his tip was, get a pair of small speakers like the Avantones, like this one right here. I keep taking my camera off and then putting it back on. But there you go. That's a self-powered speaker, totally affordable and not hard to come by. Okay, I'm gonna be careful when I say affordable, because for some people, a couple $100 for a powered speaker is like way too much. But in my case, I just got one of those. But he was saying, get two of those and set them up on stands and make it like your nice stereo image. They only give you the mid range, and it doesn't have a crossover in it. That was the other key part. And you begin to learn how to mix where you can tell if the bass is doing the right thing because of how it's affecting your mix. You won't hear lots of low frequencies, but you can tell, and you can listen to other mixes that sound great. So that's really a good tip for that. Before you worry about whether you should add the sub, worry about whether or not you know what a great bass mix sounds like with what you've already got too. Headphones are another really good one. These headphones I just got in, these are Olo Audio. They're not inexpensive and they do sound great. But when Andrew Sheps was on the show, he mixes in those Sony, what is it, the 7508s or 7506s or something like that. I'll look that up. They're headphones that have been around forever. And I'm going to look those up while we do it. And one key takeaway for finding something like that you want to work on, especially with headphones, you're going to have to really train yourself to know what things sound like. Also on regular speakers, your monitors. And it's probably more important that those monitors will be supported for the next 10 to 20 years than whether it's the absolute best one. Because if you train yourself on a pair of headphones and then the headphones are no longer available because they all break and you have to be able to replace the parts and stuff. Sony MDR 7506s. Those are the ones that Andrew was mixing on and talked about too. But having the here you go, I'll give you that. Watch this clever. How do I do a comment? I don't know if I know how to add a comment. But anyway, they're over on Amazon. You can check them out if you're curious.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know. That might have been, I don't know if that was a succinct answer or all over the place, but sub is fun, especially if you just want to have fun cranking stuff up. So you may find that you want to have a sub more for the production aspect than for the accurate mix decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it looks like, so they're looking at the HS5S and wanted to know whether to get the sub with it or without. And I guess that's what a lot of those monitor speaker packages in that sort of mid-range do have a sub option that you can get. And I mean, I don't know, I'm simple, so I don't have the sub, but I don't really have a mixing, right? I don't do a lot of actual music mixing. I don't, secret, don't tell anyone. But I do a lot more YouTube and mobile creation stuff these days, and a lot more stuff in headphones than I do with speakers. But I guess would it depend on the genre as well of the type of music that you're creating? I'd imagine folks that are doing a lot of electronic music would probably benefit more from a subwoofer, or is that completely old school thinking and it's probably not?
Okay, so the HS5S, that's the Yamaha, like the NS10s, it's their new version of it. I think that if you're going to go with the system, it's smart to lean on the fact that somebody has already dialed in the system for you, and they've already like figured out the speakers and the crossover to the sub. I don't know, how much rocket science they're doing behind the scenes on that.
Yeah.
But in my case, the speakers up top, they're crossed over, or they're filtered out at a certain point, and the subs are crossed over as well. So it does give you that ability to turn them up loud, because you're not going to blow up the main speakers, because they're not trying to push 30 hertz at the same time. Just the sub is. Atom Audio is another great choice for speaker packages as well. They make I've got the T5Vs right back there, which I really like a lot, and they're A series, which is a new one, and they're also actually full transparency. They're a sponsor on my podcast, but their series allows you to pair up their smaller near field monitors with their subs, and they come with a built-in room correction, and you can use SonarWorks reference to measure with the mic in your space, and then what you do is you upload that profile directly to the processing on the speakers, and now the speakers, with no latency, like my system, they do the room correction for you, so you get that accurate mix position, and I think some phase coherence and stuff like that. But you don't have to load a plugin in your DAW or run a software on the computer to get that EQ correction. It's just built right into the speaker. So to me, that's a really, really cool solution for that.
Very cool. And if you're sitting there, by the way, with a pair of $100 headphones, and that's what you mix on, and you're making good music, that's all good. But I guess this is levels up. This is aspirational stuff that you can start moving up towards if you are in that environment, and if you're starting to take it seriously. And again, if you're like Lij and I, and you do this for work, it's all tax deductible. So go and
and remember, like, there's always somebody out there who's more than happy to accept your money if you want to buy stuff for your studio. So the $100 headphones, all you have to do on the $100 headphones is learn, well, what does a great record sound like on a pair of $100 headphones? Okay, I'm just going to keep working on my record until it sounds like that, and if it doesn't sound loud enough, make it louder. If it's not, needs more high end, add more high end. Just take all the knobs and turn them until you start getting there.
Exactly. Trial and error.
Failures.
Yep, all those failures, spot on. Sion's got a question here. What would you say, Lij, takes the most time in your studio? What do you spend your most? Is it paying bills and invoicing supply?
Oh man, admin.
Yeah.
I really, I hate to say it, but it's related to my podcast as well. But I find myself again spending way more time looking at my browser window and my open email than I would like to be. So that's frustrating. As far as the studio stuff goes, things that take time that I wish didn't, because when you're asking this question, you say, what do you say takes the most time? I think we were looking for the time we wish we didn't have to spend question or answer. Maintenance is a pain, and sometimes maintenance means actually fixing something that's broken, like a cable or something like that. But I'll be honest, the thing that breaks more than actual physical things is the computer. It's like, how many times, I sign up for 1 gig fiber internet and I get it all dialed in, and I come and it's like, great, the download is blazing fast. And then you just come in tomorrow and it's like, it's no longer blazing fast. What happened? Yesterday it worked. It just doesn't work today. And it's like nobody has a solution for you. So that stuff is frustrating. All the digital things that just they're supposed to work and then they just don't. And you're like, why? Why is it not working today?
Yeah, I hear you on that one. And our mantra around on this channel is don't update until you need to, or if there's a feature that you actually need. So Mac users, I've just taken the plunge on my laptop and gone to Ventura. There's a few things I don't like and a few things that aren't working. And my desktop, the Mac Mini I use in the studio, is still on Big Sur or Monterey or something from a couple of times back, because it is all working perfectly right now, and there's nothing in the new version that I need. So avoiding the shininess of the new version. It's weird because the two pieces of advice you get are always make sure you're updated to the latest drivers and firmware and software, and don't update anything unless you really have to. So it's like contradictory between those two. But unless there's a security update or something that something's gonna break, I tend to go with it. If it ain't broke, don't.
To add to that, when it comes to software upgrades, remember that software companies are motivated to keep you coming back to the water trough for the newest upgrade.
Mm.
And it's just as possible that they've added 2 new features on, which are pretty cool, but aren't necessarily going to make or break your ability to produce. But they may have also just broken 2 connections to other interfaces or things that work in your studio.
Yeah.
So it is
Yeah.
typical for the messaging to be, wait, don't upgrade right away if you're in the audio world, because we have a lot of cogs and wheels and things that
Oh
all need
yeah.
to work together, plugins, DAWs, other software, the operating system and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
No, exactly.
also another sponsor on my show has been OWC, and they
Yeah.
do computer stuff. And one of the things I always really appreciated about them was they get that they make it so that if you want to keep your old computer running and like speed it up and stuff like that, you can
Yeah.
get the stuff you need. Or if you want to go with the newest thing, you can also get stuff to improve your computer there.
Very cool. Very, very good tips. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, sorry for the not boring answer, Sion, but I guess the reality of the situation is, yeah, it's tweaking hardware and software, it's doing the admin, and it's keeping the cogs turning. But, and look, it's a good thing, I guess, to say, because, Lij, you've been in the music biz for a very long time. For myself, I've only been doing this as my job full time for 2 years now, and don't get sort of lured in by the illusion that having a job where all you do is sit around and play with music all day is just going to be this nirvana of perfection, because yeah, it's still a business and it's still a lot of behind the scenes cogs that are going to be keep turning, rather than just sitting there jamming on guitars and twiddling knobs all day. So
Yeah, and I mean, if that question was related to mixing, I think an answer is that preparing a mix takes longer than doing the mix, um,
yeah,
because you have to set up a lot of things and get things dialed in and stuff like that. And then the answer in general for whatever version you're doing, whether it's the business side, the creative side, the songwriting, the mixing, whatever, is it's always this, which is, excuse me, the more you do something on repeat, so the more you are, like with my podcast, putting out the same podcast production format every week simplifies the ability to dial it in and make it more efficient. So
yeah,
if you want to spend less time doing stuff you don't want to do in any aspect, do more of it so that you can dial in the efficiency of that one thing,
yeah,
whether it's like, your product offer for your studio, maybe you're mixing for other clients, or whether it's doing mixes yourself, whether it's songwriting, come up with a real system for how you do your songwriting. Like, when do you do your sketch? When do you take it to the next level? Where do you organize everything and store it on the hard drive?
yeah.
I'm always switching things up, so I'm like my own worst enemy there.
Well, you say that, but I must admit, when I went on Lij's podcast a couple of years ago, I actually was impressed and stole the email chain that you sent out. So you
Oh,
had a
right on.
form that was set up, you had all this automated stuff, and you used I think Calendly for calendar invites and things. So
Yeah.
you've used a lot of those automation tools, and I now do that. So when I invite someone to the show, I have a pro forma that I just send them, and I just plug in the YouTube link and the StreamYard link. Exactly. I mean, I didn't have to, because Lij has been on the show before, so I just said, here's a couple of links. I didn't go through that whole thing this time, but yeah, it makes it so much easier, because yeah, if you're doing things more than once, like it's the same with music, like mixing templates and things are the same sort of thing. If you're doing the same thing, don't sit down and start adding tracks every time you're setting up. If you use the same 16 tracks for guitars and bass and drums on every single mix, then have them as a template and start with something to start with. So I learned that from Lij, and I've been doing it ever since. So thank you for that one.
I'm browsing through all the comments here. Haven't been able to read everything.
Yeah, well, I've tagged. We'll talk first guitars in a minute, because we had a few of those. Do you do any looping? Because many Vibes has asked a couple of questions about
Yeah.
looping, and it's kind of the new coolness, isn't it? You see a lot of folks out there with looper pedals and things. Have you got?
That's
have
funny that you
done
asked that,
anything with it?
because I've been thinking about getting another looper. So I have 2 that I would use right now. I still have the Line 6 green delay pedal, the old school one.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is awesome. It's so quick and easy to just loop apart. So for example, while I'm playing guitar and teaching myself how to do more soloing, it's so helpful to just, like I'll learn, and I love being a student, a perpetual student. So like here I am. I'm like, what, 50, almost 56, and I've been doing this forever. And I'm like, oh, that's what Mixolydian mode is. That's exciting. So whereas other people are like, you didn't know about Mixolydian mode, but I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So if I just play a major chord and then a major chord and then back and forth, I can play in Mixolydian solo. So then I'll use the looper pedal and I'll just like play 2 chords and then hit the loop button. And now I can solo over that for an hour. And, the other guitar never hates me. It's not the same if you do that with your bandmates. They really get sick of you after an hour of you soloing. So I find a looper is really great for that. The green delay, I quickly discovered that it's a very short loop time. So if I wanted to play a full verse, chorus, chord progression and loop that, it ran, it kicked me out of the loop mode very quickly. So next thing for me to try would probably be my Eventide H9 pedal, which has looping capability in it too. I don't know what the time limit is there, but that would be a great one. Then you get into like the elaborate looper pedals with all the foot switches on them for stuff. And I haven't used those, but I'm thinking about how I'd like to get into that. I'm not terribly tempted myself for looping as in like creating a whole live performance thing. Like, KT Tunstall did that. I remember, it was like hand claps and vocal things and guitar stuff. And then the whole hit song gets assembled live. And of course you got some great people who do that now. Who's the, Mark Rebier? Is that, how do I say his name? He's like blowing up on YouTube and he's hilarious. His live loop stuff, but for me, like, looping for composing is very cool. I've gone through all the effort of setting up a Ableton Live session where, for example, I had you come in. Ableton Live does have a looping plugin. So if you don't know what your tempo is going to be, you can start playing something and then hit the loop button, and I think it'll loop it and set your session to a looped tempo. And then you can have, if you really want to get clever with it, you can take, I think I have it on right here. This is how serious I am about getting back into looping. I've got my ancient MIDI foot pedal just sitting there on the ground waiting for me to
is that the Boss? Is that the classic Boss pedal?
It's a Korg
the Korg,
FC6. And of course I'd have to use a real MIDI cable. I have to use a MIDI cable on it,
old school,
and then hook it up to a MIDI interface. But if I do that, then I could probably have an Ableton Live session going here in the studio, and I could play guitar, come up with an idea immediately, like play another line over it, hit the next pedal, add another thing, and get into that for composition, which I think could be really fun, But I will say, it got me Googling again. I was like, there's still, correct me if I'm wrong, but still nobody makes a plugin that will just let you impromptu loop something in the DAW without having to decide what your tempo is going to be beforehand. So please tell me I'm wrong on that. It'd be great to discover it.
Yeah, look, I know that there's a bunch of iOS apps. I know, again, Jade Star, our iOS app pro, has done some of the cool looping apps that you can get. So if you want to start with something really simple, and you've already got, say, an interface for your smartphone, then there you go.
It's been around for ages. Loopy HD.
Yeah, Loopy HD.
And you can just like you press one of those and it loops it, and then you hit the next one and it loops it. But the challenge with a lot of these things is if you're playing guitar, your hands are busy. So how are you going to hit the thing? I tried putting this on the ground and hitting it with my toe, and it didn't work.
Oh, that's super cool. Colday's got a couple of suggestions. Yeah, Donna makes some really budget gear that's actually
is that a pedal?
That's the hardware pedal, I think, the Donna Looper. And he says, it's obviously the DL4 or Boss who make looper pedals, and you can go nuts with this stuff. But I've never done it again, but it's obviously very popular. Every time I walk into a pub on a Sunday afternoon, there's a 19-year-old dude there with the long hair and the acoustic guitar and the big rack in front of him with all the pedals, and he's making all the sounds. And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm jealous, but I'm super jealous because it looks.
Well, I mean, if I was going to do performance looping, I would. definitely be curious about that. I'm looking at the Donner now. It looks cool on seeing it online. But I would. There's the one that has like the I picture the black rubber covered. It's been around for ages. Maybe it was Roland or something that made an early
Yeah.
one.
Yep.
And then I think you have like rubber wheels for turning the volume up and down and things like that too. But I would, if you're going to perform, then you need to at some point you need to get serious about like, okay, am I buying gear that's going to survive a bunch of gigs and stuff like that? And so it's
Yeah.
worth spending a little bit on making sure you got something that's reliable.
This is where it gets embarrassing when you have too much gear, because I just like someone there was a sale on Amazon like 2 or 3 years ago for this Moa brand, which is not a brand that is highly known, but
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
this little multi effects processor. This has a built-in 300-second looper in it as well, which I've not used in forever because I'm like, man, I got to go out and buy myself a looper pedal. This is getting ridiculous, and I'm like, I think there's one in that bottom drawer right there, and there is. So there you go. I'll play around with that
And
later.
then I'm quite certain that along with Logic, you have what is it called? Live
Oh
Stage?
yeah,
What's it called?
main stage.
Main Stage, and I think that doesn't that have built-in sounds and looping kind of capabilities? That's
Mm,
what the Mark Rebier guy uses.
so
Let me
much
see if I can
so much
find
to
that link
learn.
for you too.
God, I guess this long hair
Because
makes you play better. Yeah,
so
totally.
if you're really curious about doing the Rebier, hold on, I don't want YouTube to start
Nice.
playing a video on me, but I'll
There's
send
those
over
Donner
that link
loopers.
to you. Or I don't think I can
Love it.
send it. I think you just have to do it.
I think so.
REBILLET. And he
Uh,
breaks down his main stage looping rig, and it's very cool because you realize this guy's massive and huge on YouTube and everything, but he does not spend money on an expensive anything. It's all like super low budget stuff, but it uses the laptop does the looping, and then the controller is just a really simple USB controller that makes it easy to slap the button and grab a new loop. And I think
yeah.
the trick with looping stuff is if you want to get advanced with it, you want to be able to add 4 or 5 elements but then take certain ones in and out so that
Mm,
you can rearrange the song. Otherwise, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but otherwise you just become a song performance where you're like, you
yeah.
start with one thing, now there's 2 things on it, now there's 3 things, now there's 4 things, and your next option is turn it all off, and that's
Yeah.
it.
And that's the thing I think that I've never really understood the whole. Yeah, there must be ways, and actually another channel that bloke who's been on this show as well is John Paul out of the UK. John Paul Music. He
Yeah.
does a heap of looping stuff, and yeah, there's all the gear, like all the same sort of stuff that we're talking about
Oh,
here. He's
that's
got
great.
the boss and he does actual live looping performance as
Hey,
well. But
very
he
quickly, Pete, when this is all said and done, how do we all go back and find all these great links that are being shared on this live stream?
That's a really good question. That's something I should do a lot better, Lij, because I should be making note of timestamping and putting these in
Does
now.
it stay in the comments or anything
It
like
does, yeah. If you're watching
that? Okay,
on the
great.
replay, you'll be able to see the live comments, so you'll be able
All
to
right, there
follow
you go,
along. So
Rockstars.
there you go. See, Lij just got you covered. Yeah, if you're watching the replay, all the live, just hit the little turn on live replay mode, and it will be playing all these comments. So anything that the moderators or myself put in, yeah, I've often thought that I'm like, if I ever hire anyone for this channel, it's to go back to my live streams and find all the timestamps and the links and put them in the description because I think
Yeah.
that might actually really help out. Should we do the first guitar thing? We had a few folks sharing
Yeah.
that one. Coldacre's first guitar was a white Ponity BC Rich Ironbird.
Yeah.
It could have taken an eye out.
Yeah,
Very
we could have
cool.
battled between my Kramer Striker 100 ST and the Pointy BC Rich.
Thomas Christ had a black Transformer with a built-in
Ooh, I like
speaker.
that.
Oh, the Sears, those ones with the built-in speaker. Those things were amazing. Was a white Flying V one bridge
Oh,
pickup Floyd.
sweet.
That's your first guitar, Ashley? My God, Flying V. That's next level. Joe and Barrett, yeah, the Yamaha acoustic. Definitely had a Yamaha acoustic very early on. Cheap but really good. Chosen by my then sax player boyfriend. There you
I
go. I'm sitting.
think I could be wrong about this, but I think the Yamaha was acoustic was what was used for Big Star 13
There you go.
to record that back in the 70s.
Love it. And Barry Glenn, my first real guitar was a 62 Gibson 335. Before that, I had Vox and a Harmony Rocket and a Watkins Rapier.
Ooh,
There you go. So yeah, a lot of guitar
Watkins.
fans.
Nice. I've got a Watkins Dominator too, a WEM upstairs.
Ooh, there you go.
That's an awesome
There you go.
amp.
So there you go. That's helped out the guitar folks, all the folks that the big guitar collectors that can can give them a few little bits to have in the show today. George or Jorge, I never know how to pronounce that name. I'm sorry, Mr. Diaz. We'll call you that. Question: how do you handle recording harsh female vocals? I'm recording a singer right now, and overall the recording is fine, but there's certainly certain frequencies that stick out and are hard to tame. You would have recorded a bunch of female vocalists in your time, Lij. What
Yep.
say you on this one?
Yep. Just dealing with that recently myself.
Mm.
Wonderful, incredible singer I've been working with. And I used a very lucky to have it, vintage U67 that sounds amazing. But still, there are certain moments where I'm like, that just seems to have an edge to it. So my first tip is work on the recording side. Again, always start at the source if you can. So if it's something that singer can actually control, sometimes you can if you're very good at communicating and you do it in a helpful, respectful way, and it doesn't sound like a criticism, you can actually let a singer know where some of these moments are happening, and you'll be surprised. Sometimes they can actually learn to control that and deliver it a little differently, and it works great. So that's always worth trying. If that's not the case and the delivery is fine, then the next thing to look at is, where are they on the mic? Are they staying in one position the whole time and singing loud and singing soft? Or are they working in and out and, a loud note, they back away? Also turning the head off the mic a little bit, instead of, here's a mic. So instead of singing right into the mic, sing off the mic like that. I don't know if you guys would be able to hear a difference right now on my voice right there, but it should sound a little different. The mic's hearing a different part of the head and the body. So that can help with the tone that's going into the mic. The next thing is the mic pre itself. So if you're recording a hot level with that microphone and the singer is hitting some strong notes, you obviously you don't want to get a red over in the DAW itself. So you don't want to be like way up near the ceiling. But even if you're not way up near the ceiling, you might actually be overloading and pushing a little too hard the analog circuitry before it gets to the converter. So you may need to slightly back down your record levels there. You always have the option to adjust record levels in real time. That was an old school technique. If you listen to a Tom Dowd interview and he's talking about recording Aretha Franklin, they had a hand on the knob. They didn't even have compressors. They're just using the mic pre knob and they're riding it in between certain lines. So they're actually bringing the level up and down in real time. Granted, I don't get that quite that fancy in the studio, but what I do and what I have done is if you've got the level up on the verse and it seems to sound great for the verse vocal, but then the chorus, it's just too much. Record the choruses separately, or pop down a couple of clicks before the chorus comes and then record that at a slightly lower level and then bring it back up for the verse. You can do that stuff or just record them all in separately. If you get past that stage and you've still got stuff where it's too harsh and it doesn't sound right. Oh, also, I didn't even start at the beginning. Try different mics first. If a mic sounds harsh, try a mic that's a little warmer. Think about mic pairings as opposites. So if you have a very bright sound, you may want to try a darker microphone. And if they complement each other in that way. If you have a very dark sound, you may want to try a brighter microphone so it complements the sound in that respect. But once you're in and it's mix time and you're like, well, nice advice, Lij, but how am I going to go back and redo it? It's already been recorded. So now you get into stuff like, the first moves at that point are things like EQ. Sometimes you can do EQ to address things, but setting an EQ curve, of course, affects the entire vocal. So then along comes tools like dynamic EQ, which says, oh, wow. So now when a certain frequency gets hit, 2K, 1K, and it's really harsh and the vocal gets loud, now the dynamic EQ is like a compression at that particular frequency range, and you can really dial it in. And then they hit that one note and the dynamic EQ starts EQ sculpting out that frequency when it hits that place. Another tool that's been around for ages that helps, I like to think about it as the smootherizer, is multiband compression. When you have harshness in an overall mix, multi-band compression can help smooth it out, and when you're
Mm.
DIY mastering, but it also runs the risk of overly smoothing all the energy in the mix.
Yeah.
But that can help with vocals. You can really start to smooth out things that are harsh, but again, you can go too far. Then the next tool, which I just got into, two of them got into it recently. First is Gullfoss by hold on, I'll get the maybe you can look that up. Gullfoss, Gulfoss, I think it is.
Yep.
And that is, it's like 300 bands of EQ, and it sort of smartly and intelligently goes in and tries to adjust things for you, so that when there's too much or too little of something, it's compensating. So you can use that to dial in on harsh frequency ranges and get it to kind of, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Mm.
But that is that OX Sound?
Sound Theory.
Sound Theory, excuse me. Yeah. OX Sound is the next one I was going to tell you about, which is Soothe. And that's a really, really useful plugin. SOOTHE, and I think Soothe 2 is the one they've got now.
I saw
and that one is really does magic on smoothing out a vocal that's got harshness in it. And I've been using that a bunch lately, and just sounds awesome.
Very cool. Yeah,
I'm sure I can come up with more, but that ought to keep you plenty busy.
That's very cool. Yeah, all the
was that too
like
advanced of an answer, or was that good?
Well, I think that the good thing about that answer, and I think all of your answers, Lij, is that you start basic and then you build up. So if you just wanted to listen to the first couple of things around some of the mic techniques and around some of the basic EQ and compression stuff, if you're doing it simple, that's going to be cool, and then you can work your way up. So I think it's the same with anything. It's like you're going to have different layers and levels. So if you want to if you got the singer right there, try some of those mic techniques, because again, you can do a lot of damage, or you can do a lot of good things just in terms of mic placement and mic technique and selection of microphones as well. And I like that technique. I do say that a lot, because I think a lot of people these days, especially in the entry-level home studio market, they buy a cheap condenser microphone and that's their
all
first
they got,
mic. And that's totally fine. But if you've got a harsh female voice, and you've got a sort of lower quality condenser mic, that's not a great combination, because it's going to pick up a lot of those tones that you really don't want. So yeah, maybe even going with a cheap like Shaw SM57 or 58 can actually do amazing things in terms of vocals. I've found anyway.
And when you're trying to dial that in, you're like trying to get this different mic placement for the different lines. Maybe don't do this right in the moment where you have to get the take. Maybe this is before you get the take. You're like learning some of how to get things to sound right, but break it up. Get the singer to sing that one line, that one word, that loud volume bit a handful of times with different angles, until you discover, oh, it really sounds smoother if you do that. Turn away. I have singers sing away from the mic sometimes. I have them singing to the back of the room. That comes with background stuff, and that's the other bits. It could be that the harshness is because you keep layering the same thing on top of it. So if you're doubling vocals, if you're doing backgrounds, and every voice is right on that one cheap condenser mic, hitting it in the same spot, and it's got that spike in it that's getting increased. So if you're going into the double land, really like sing differently on the mic. It'll make it easier to double too.
Yeah, and it's fun too. You can pretend you're in a doo-wop band, and you can like be over here for one, and then you can just come over there, and you just get different off-axis positions. And
we did our last session. I was singing background vocals in the I have a kitchen ISO booth, and I opened the microwave and I just sang into the microwave. It was the magic.
There's so many cool things. Sylvia Massey, who I think she's probably been on your podcast. Everyone's been on your podcast, but like,
she hasn't yet. She needs to. Well, we've done a live video webinar where she was there.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, she does some amazing stuff. She did a lot of work with Tool, and like she's thrown pianos out of windows and sampled them, and she's like done all sorts of different techniques in terms of
hand me that
sound.
piano.
Oh, amazing stuff. Very, very cool. We've got a couple more questions here, but we've got about 20 minutes left. So if you are here live and you have a burning question and you want to throw it in the chat, feel free to do that. And again, if you're watching on the replay, a couple of things you can do. Hit the thumbs up button. In fact, you can do that live. Why doesn't everyone do that right now? Just go down to thumbs up. But you can leave a comment if you're watching the replay, because I'll be down there, and if anything comes up that I need Lij's advice on, I promise you I'll hassle him. I'll email him and I'll say, Lij, we've got an extra question we need an answer on. Interestingly, I was listening to your podcast recently with Sarah Carter, and you were talking because she's like a amazing producer and mixer, and she's just got into YouTube and doing amazingly successfully with her teaching on YouTube. And you tackled a topic around giving away your secrets, I guess, like telling everyone and giving away everything that you do and how you do it. You've always been super generous in terms like I don't when I listen to you, I don't think, oh, Lij has given us he's given us the stuff, the free stuff, but if you want the real information, you got to come and buy his exclusive course. I mean, as someone who does have courses, who does do a lot of that stuff, where's that balance? Like, is that a conscious choice you made to say, I'm putting it all out there on Front Street?
I can't help it. I love talking about what we do, and it's just fun. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. I do think that there's, if anybody who's watching this is interested in that, creating a channel or being a teacher, one of the great things I learned along the way about teaching is the concept that you only need to be one step ahead of your student. You just
Yep.
need to know the answer to the next question. So, that makes all of us potentially ready to teach whatever it is that we already know. If we can just find somebody who needs that, just needs the help. They just need that next answer. And if you've got it already, you're ready to be a teacher. So,
Yeah.
I think that, the podcast and the interviews I do, it's just fun to talk about it all. It's fun to share as much as possible. I think that courses, the nice thing about doing courses and the balance in terms of what goes into a course is it gives you an opportunity to create something that's maybe more long form, and specific. So for example, I have a course called Rockstars of Drums where we did a full day in the studio with a session drummer here, and we mic'd up the drums a bunch of different ways, and I demonstrated different miking techniques and stuff like that with Q&A and all kinds of stuff. And we just captured it all too and turned it into a course. And I did something similar with Craig Alvin, who's a Grammy award-winning mixer. We have something called the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass, and he taught his step-by-step mixing technique that he uses for mixing Grammy-winning records, and all the mixes he does. And so he showed that to us. Then I took that and, broke it up into modules to go in a course. So, just taking it a step at a time. And, the nice thing about a course is it gives a chance to go in and really get a focused deep dive into a whole way of doing things. And, it's put together where you can go find it when you're ready to go watch the video and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Coursework. I mean, it's fun to take courses. I love doing it. I'm learning guitar right now and I love it.
Yeah, I know, and it's good. And I think that the good thing, like I've bought courses from creators and then not actually done the course, but I've done it like to support the creator.
Right,
I'll watch all their free stuff, and I'll just go and buy a course, and then go, oh well, even if I never watch it, I'm kind of supporting them. And yeah, so I think and like you say, there's it's just a time thing, isn't it? That comes down to that. I mean, there's people like me who I live on YouTube and I live on live streams and I talk about everything all the time. But if you're running a studio and you want to get inside the brain of someone like yourself, like we're very lucky that we got 2 hours to pick your brain here today, but it's a pretty rare sort of thing because you're running a studio and you're recording and you're doing all the other things. So yeah, that's where courses come into it. So
I love the live stuff. I love the events, where I get together with a bunch of the rock stars. We had one in the spring where a small collection of guys came here to the studio and we spent all weekend together hanging out, going to a mastering session at Sterling Sound, and then coming in, just listening to everybody's mixes here in the studio. And that stuff's really, really fun to do.
Yeah. Nothing quite like live. Yeah, looking forward to getting back to doing more live stuff. It's been an interesting few years, hasn't it, in terms of that sort of thing? But we're starting to see a bit more of that happening. Got a question from Lee Davies here, probably more for me because I see the word iPad in there. Just had to play with iPad, the Tonebridge app, and a PV amp kit adapter. Is that a question? Did I miss a part 2 of that one? Oh, there we go. Just had to play with those. Sounds great with the 3.5mm jack to headphones. What cable would you recommend to get a mixer for live use for the PV? Tried a stereo 3.5mm to 1/4-inch jack, but it just wouldn't work. It was very tiny, very tinny. So I guess it's about recording guitars and getting a decent guitar signal into.
So I don't know if this is quite the answer, but I did an interview. Gosh, I'm gonna have to go find the link for you. But we were talking about the Sufjan Stevens record. I think it was the one that was all the different states, and it was all recorded with nothing but a little 1/8-inch jack
Yeah.
going into a sound card on a computer. So it just
Yeah.
made me think about that. The little 3.5 millimeter, like, a hit
Yeah.
record was done that way. So don't discard it entirely as meaning,
Yeah. No,
but
you definitely
I
can.
can understand how something might sound tinny. And um, I'm not sure if, do you understand this setup exactly, or?
A little bit. I'm thinking it might be because if you're using an iPad, it might be because you can use the headphone jack, and the headphone. You're getting into the weeds here, but there's
Yeah.
the headphone jack is a TRRS, which is tip ring sleeve, which is
Yep.
a type of 1/8-inch jack that has a microphone and stereo output. So it's got 3 channels basically in there. And what you tend to find is if you're plugging a guitar into that, it's basically instead of using an instrument level signal, it's using the mic level signal. So a lot of
Yeah.
that tinny sound you get is because it's not really designed for that. And what
Right.
you probably would need is a little iRig type adapter. So you can get
Yep.
really cheap ones, like they're just a standard 3.5 inch that convert a standard 1/4 inch mono into the TRRS connection, and then you can plug headphones into that to monitor your signal. So the very basic ones are like $10, and you can pick those up on Amazon or wherever, and then you can go digital as well. So there's adapters you can get like behind me that Lij pointed out, iRig, IK Multimedia, who have
Yeah.
provide a lot
Yeah.
of the gear for this channel for free. Full disclosure there. But yeah, so they make the iRig Pro and the iRig HD series of interfaces, and they're great because they plug straight into your Lightning port or your USB-C port, depending what sort of device you have, or even just a standard USB, and then you can plug your guitars in there. So I think I don't like the answer to ever be go and spend some money, but I think even if you just wanted to get a basic guitar interface to plug in, you're going to be, because those cables, they're not made for that. They're usually not
Yeah.
shielded, and you're going to get a whole lot of noise through there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's definitely the answer to that. So, um, it's one thing to understand the electronics and mechanics of what's going on and why it does or doesn't work, but really the easy answer is just go buy something that is not expensive, that has an obvious guitar cable jack going into it, that's
Yeah,
designed for recording guitar on iOS, and it's going to sound great. Um,
yeah, exactly.
and yeah, the shoot, what was I going to say about that? I don't remember. I don't remember what I was going to say about that. I think
No, it's
the
fine.
iRig stuff, I've got it as well, and it sounds
Yeah,
cool and it's fun to use it.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, you can spend anything, like I say, from 10
But
bucks up to
also,
hundreds.
if you happen to have, and I learned this from you, Pete, is if you just happen to have a USB interface of some sort that has a 1/4
Mm.
inch or an XLR in, those will work with iOS as long as it's like class compliant, right?
Oh man, you see 2.5 years ago, and you still remember
Oh
all the stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, class compliant interface, meaning it doesn't need a driver, and yeah, and that's exactly what I do. So I've got a Steinberg interface, just a 2 channel Steinberg UR interface here, and as long as you've got either the Lightning to USB adapter for your iPhone or iPad, or the USB-C to USB adapter for if you're using an iPad Pro, then yeah, just plug straight in, and that's a way a lot of folks around here actually do that. They'll just have a Focusrite or a Steinberg or something like that, plug it in, and they're good to go. So good tips there. Yeah, Dan Ekberg says the iRig Pro Duo has been huge for me, and just under $200. So yeah, it's a bit of an investment, but you get good quality mic and guitar in for just that. All right. Backing vocals. We're talking vocals before. How much reverb and panning should you use for backing vocals? Have you used a ton of vocal tracks to create a huge vocal sound? Big
definitely.
vocals. What's your tips on this one?
Definitely. I've definitely done big vocal sessions and I love doing that stuff. I remember once early on hearing somebody say that the Beach Boys would 6-track every vocal line that was getting recorded or something like that. I was like, wow, they layer each vocal note 6 times. So I highly recommend you experiment with that. I think the answer about what sounds best is trial and error. Sometimes
Mm,
more voices sound better. Sometimes less voices sound better. There have been times in the studio where, I thought about layering up the background vocals, and then we listen to it and it's like, you know what? Just the one of each part, a harmony part, sounds better in this song
mm,
versus like a whole bunch of stuff. And then, when you layer those voices, what you're doing is you're layering a lot of things, duh. So you're layering
yeah.
imperfections too. So each
Mm,
voice is moving around a little bit around the note, and now you've got them together. Now you're getting this chorusing effect. And if you've ever taken a synthesizer and turned up the voicing knob, and it's you're detuning all these voices and panning them out and stuff like that, and it can sound bigger and thicker, but the tuning is less precise, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So those are all things that give an effect to the vocal. And panning, I tend to pan the backgrounds out to the sides.
Yeah.
Lead vocals in here, I might pan the vocals hard left and right, but you have to make a decision about that. Dave Pensado, I remember, had a great comment where he said, because we live in a world of earbuds for music a lot now, so you have to understand that, along came the Walkman in the 80s and people were in headphones more. And then along came the iPhone and the iPod and people were in headphones all the damn time. So, the experience of listening to music shifted a bit from speakers and car. In a car, you hear a very different sense of panning than you do in headphones. And so Dave's point was, check those mixes on iPod, on earbuds, because you really get an exaggerated version of the panning. And so you can really decide, you can be like, oh, you know what, panned way out to the sides, it sounds a little goofy, it's distracting, for example. So you have to make the creative artistic decision on that. As far as reverbs go, how much, it's a taste thing. So if you want to have a lot of reverb, you can do it. Just know that the more reverb you're mixing with the dry signal, the more of a wash you get of that sound. So, remember reverb is the effect of, if you hear me, I'm up close on the mic, and that's what my voice sounds like right now. I don't think it'll sound like reverb back here, but you hear a little bit more of the room right now, right? So so when you add a lot of reverb to a sound, you're also giving the impression of things going away. So if you want your vocals, your background vocals, to sound up close, like an R&B track, then you got to be careful with that reverb, or you might have to use a pre-delay to set it back more. Stick to delays over reverbs. But if you want it to sound far away, then turn the reverb up and it sounds like somebody's on the other end of the church singing to you.
Yeah. Oh, it's very, very cool. The delay in against I can't remember who it was, because you've interviewed 350 plus people, but someone blew my mind with that, because I used to use reverb on vocals and very occasionally use delay, and occasionally with delay it was usually a slap back delay. And then one of the people on your podcast one time just said, oh no, I basically just lean on delay all the time for all my vocals. And I started using delay, and it's amazing the different kind of sound that you can get, and a lot cleaner sound, because sometimes you just put reverb up and, like you say, it just starts swimming in reverb and everything gets muddy and it's just not cool. But whereas delay just gives you that little crisp, clean kind of sound in there, and I'm like, I'm sold. So yeah.
Well, that's all reverb is. Reverb is a whole lot of delays. It's just your voice bouncing off around, isn't it? Every wall, every which way you can think of,
Yeah, so it's at least controllable with a bit of delay.
In the acoustic world.
Yes, absolutely. Many Vibes says, I like how reverb hides my mistakes. Look, that's part of it. Yeah,
reverb's cool. Reverb's super cool. I mean, there's a lot of music that's just tons of reverb, and that's what makes it. That's the vibe, So don't be afraid to go for it as a stylistic choice too.
Absolutely. Turn it up to 11 to see what it does. I like that. Another tip that I learned early on is, like, when you're playing with a new plugin or a new tool or a new piece of toy, turn it up all the way. See what the maximum it can do is. You might never use that, but at least you know. And then for one particular style choice, it may be the right thing to use. We are coming to the end here. Can you believe that 2 hours just goes boom, and it flies by? Is there anything, because I've been talking at you and asking you questions and throwing things your way, what's new in the recording studio Rockstars and the Lij Shaw world? Is there anything going on that you want to talk about or that folks should know about?
I'm excited for next year. I want to, as a personal goal, I really want to dial up my YouTube channel and start making videos like we talked about at the beginning of this. But unfortunately, either fortunately or unfortunately, I already know the lesson that consistency is everything. So that can make me also like nervous to get started, because I'm like, if I can't keep it up, I don't know how I'm going to do it. So sometimes that's a kiss of death. Sometimes it's better to just stumble your way into it and then get going. So I'm excited about that. My studio is so much fun for me to work in right now. The new sound system and the monitors just makes it really, really fun to compose and mix. and I'm excited about getting into this SSL workflow. I had two of the Avid S1s in here, and I was enjoying using those, but I sort of learned what worked well about those, and maybe what were limitations. And so now I'm excited to try this other way of mixing, because I think there's going to be a lot of great features that come up, but we'll find out when I get there. Again, as far as I'm concerned, jury's out until I finally stumble on the thing that lets me mix as fast as I could mix on an analog console, and then I'll be thrilled.
That's it's exciting stuff though, because and I think that someone was mentioning when you were talking about it before that it's the area that mobile mixing doesn't quite have, because I think they think that the touch screen is going to do everything for you, and none of those control surfaces work for mobile creators. So someone's going to invent a cool thing that you just slide your iPad into, and it's a full control surface that records digitally and straight into your
What about
iPad.
what about those little USB mixers like the Korg micro mixer and stuff like that? Have you tried any of those?
Yeah, there's some that work. The problem is the whole class compliance thing. So a lot of them need
Yeah,
a driver to run, so they
yeah,
have limited support. So some of them will work with some of the bits, but then you try and use the knobs and the faders and the panning, and none of that actually triggers anything. And GarageBand is very basic with that sort of thing. But some apps will have that full sort of MIDI CC control, but you got to spend a lot of time programming it. So a lot of the gear is designed that you plug it into Logic and it works perfectly because it lines up with
right.
everything. And same with like the SSL and Pro Tools,
Yeah.
it's driven to actually do that. Whereas no one's cracked that nut. And I think part of it is Apple locking down their side of things in the mobile space, where they're kind of keeping it a little bit under wraps so that you can't quite run anything. And we got
Well,
excited, but yeah, it's
the
not quite
mobile
there.
stuff, I mean, I think it's really, really laudable what you're doing, which is the teaching mobile production and all of that. I think it's great. I love mobile for the fact that you can just make music in new places and do stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it so accessible to people, and I fully understand the challenge with trying to wanting your iPhone or whatever to also be a full blown studio.
Mm.
um, there's a lot of stuff that it can do, but you got to do it a little different than you would do it in your studio for sure. And when I bought
Yeah.
my iPhone, I thought my iPhone was expensive. I immediately spent way more money buying all the music apps I could find.
And that's it's a bit of a running joke around here that Jade Starr talked about before. She's like, it's not like Pokemon. Apps are not like Pokemon. You don't have to catch them all. You don't have to go out there and get
Right.
every single app.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of folks, I think, and I say this, you do you. You're a grown ass adult. You got your own money. You can spend it how you like. But I think a lot of folks, especially in the mobile space, there's so many cool tools and there's so many cool apps that you can download that you can just noodle with, that it takes you away from the goal, or what may be your goal, which is to actually create and record and release music. So yeah, I think there's a slippery slope there, but it's the same with the gas, with the gear acquisition syndrome for a desktop setup, because you can buy all the gear and keep buying the gear.
So speaking of releasing, I've got one last thing that I will mention. So
Excellent.
since between our last show and this, I put out my instrumental record Skadoosh, which
Oh,
is
that's out.
I believe it's 9 songs, and it's all the music that I have used in my podcast. When I launched the
Yes.
podcast, I had a record, and I was like, wait a minute, I got perfect stuff to make the music bed for the show. So I did that, and then we crossed 2 million downloads on the podcast this year, and I was like, hey, gee whiz, Lij, now that your record is double platinum, maybe you should actually release it. So I did that. And now Skadoosh is out there, and it's available on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere. I did it through Hollywood Recording Studios Records, which is my friend Megan Gohill in LA. And then another buddy of mine, Matt Boudreau, aka my brother from another podcast, from the Working Class Audio podcast, he has set up a wonderful Atmos mixing room in his studio, and he just did 2 mixes for me. So those are not out yet, but I just got to,
Ooh.
just before this, I installed the Atmos renderer on my computer and was able to finally play it back and listen in binaural right here. So I'm
Very
finally
cool.
walking the walk, and I'm setting it up so that I can explore doing some listening to that and being excited about it being done right by Matt over in his studio. But I can also experiment with some binaural mixing in headphones. from my
Very
Pro
cool.
Tools and then from Logic and all that here. So I'm excited about
Yeah.
that stuff too.
Atmos is very cool. I've only scratched the surface. Like when Apple released their full Atmos and Dolby support in Logic,
Yeah.
there was one of the rare times they had a chat to me because people think that I talk to Apple every day, but I certainly don't. But they did want to. They were so excited by that they wanted to tell me all about it. And yeah, it's very very cool. Very complex, obviously, because it's hard enough to mix in stereo, let alone trying to mix in full surround. But yeah, it's amazing stuff. So well, there you go. That's a very cool thing. We'll keep an eye out for that. And Skadoosh. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the tracks from this is part of your the course, the free course, your recording class that you have on your
Yes,
website.
American Winter is the title of one of the tracks, and that one is in my free mix course called mixmasterbundle.com. And if you go there it is right in the middle. That will give you my free condensed video course. It's an introduction to mixing in your DAW using nothing but stock plugins and free
Awesome.
plugins. And it'll show you how to take your mixes from sounding like amateur demos to sounding pro using pretty simple, straightforward stuff.
Very cool. Definitely worth a look. And like I say, yeah, as soon as I heard Skadoosh, I remember that because your promotions from years ago, you would mention that, you get the stems of one of your tracks from your release, Skadoosh. So
Yeah,
it's very cool to hear that Skadoosh is out there now. So I've dropped here in the chat the Song Whip link, or you can just search Skadoosh. But Song Whip just gives you all the places: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Tidal.
I never
Every
even
little
heard of Deezer. I need to go check that one out.
Oh, there's so many. Look, there's all these places that you can go to. You go Quobuzz,
Cobuzz, I know about.
Napster's
Cobuzz
back.
is great. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a heap of places you can get that. So do go and check out Lij's music and your track, your release from last
Yeah,
year, the
last time
spring
we were
song.
here was my spring song, which was the first song I ever released as an independent artist that I co-wrote with my daughter when she was 7.
There it is.
And then I made a lyric video of it, and
Amazing lyric
since then
video.
to now it's already gotten 30,000 views and I
Amazing
think
stuff.
over 1,000 likes. So that's been fun. For some reason they turn off comments on those videos. I don't know why, but I was bummed because I was like, don't get to have a dialogue with anybody over there. So
It's weird, yeah. Some distributors. So DistroKid, who again, full disclosure, a sponsor of this channel, they leave the comments on, but I've noticed that some distributors turn it off, and I think it's to stop bots and spam and things going in there and
maybe
spamming
I'll
it.
have to
But
go see if we can turn ours on.
yeah. Talk to your distributor; they might be able to turn them on for you. But I did want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you folks who have been here in the chat today. You've made
Yes,
it
thank you
awesome as
guys.
always. Great question, really smart question. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Like we've been able to pick Lidge's brain because you've asked the right questions and we've got the right information extracted there. So I do thank everyone here, and of course, huge thanks to Lij Shaw. Always welcome here on the channel, my friend. I know that the viewers here always love to see your face and to hear what you've got to say. And a lot of the stuff, again, we're not all in amazing studios. I think a lot of people have been talking about all the gear behind you and have been drooling over some of the stuff you've showed us here. But again, it's a lot of it is about the music and what you're creating and what
It's
you're
all
doing.
about the music. I think about it all the time. I'm like, if something happened and I lost my studio, I would just take my acoustic guitar and my iPhone and I just go write those songs in a van or wherever.
Yep.
I mean, there's sometimes I'm really jealous of my little office up in the house, which has, Logic and a simple interface home studio set. I'm like, why don't I just come make music up here? I
Many of
get
us are doing
stuck in
it.
all the fancy stuff. The more complicated your studio gets, the more complications you're going to be faced with as you try and make your music. So just remember that. Keep it simple. Make music. Make those songs.
A very zen and appropriate comment to end the show on. So huge thank you to you, Lij. Thank you to everyone for being here. Do check out Lij over at recordingstudiorockstars.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the free course he's got over there. And go and check out Lij's music, Skadoosh, and his album Spring Spring is an amazing thing. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. As we say, as I like to say at the end of every show, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating. We're going to let Lij give the final words on the show here today.
Stay cool, rock stars.